but iPhone did an upgrade, and for some reason the system didn't work with the iPhone upgrade without going in and modifying stuff. So half of our members who had iPhones didn't receive the calls to their phone.
Okay.
This serves as that backup for that system. And being that I live out of town, coming down Main Street, if that fire siren's going off, people do move out of the way or pay more attention to what's going around them
Right.
than without the fire siren going off. So I do believe it does serve a great importance. Being selective on the calls would be an absolute nightmare for our dispatchers,
Right.
because they would have to say, that call warrants a
Wouldn't wanna make
siren.
that call, yeah.
And who's to say a bus accident is not as valid as somebody's smoke alarm going off in a house? So
Well
it's
said, Chief. Well said.
under new business. Junior Fire Department did a car wash. They had a great time. They made just around $500.
Good.
It was a good fundraising activity for them. And on that same note, they're also, if you're driving around town, you could always reach out to any officer of the department, or I'm sure a Madam Clerk would love to gather the information as well. But our junior fire department are putting the reflective bands on the fire hydrants. If you see one that doesn't have them, they've been put on for probably 7-8 years now. And they were held by a zip tie, and over those years, the zip tie just kind of fell to pieces. So they're going out trying to replace them. They're great at nighttime. We could see a hydrant ways up, so it gives us a good plan and opportunity of what hydrant we want to grab if there is a fire.
Good.
Big event for us upcoming is the golf tournament on the 7th of May. This, so far, between teams and whole sponsorship, has been spectacular. I think we're going to have a really good time. And Atlantic Emergency Services, kindly, after we signed a contract for a ladder truck, became our corporate sponsor. So
I want drone coverage of that event. I want drone coverage.
the county's doing several different things for us as well, hopefully in budget planning, but I haven't heard anything about the fire department's official request for budgetary issues. The county is looking at taking over our record management system financially, looking at a virtual training platform for the county, just trying to take some of the services that each individual department uses and put on a county umbrella, and the county pays for it, which will hopefully loosen some of the constraints that we have budgetary-wise.
It's overdue. It's great.
Bunk room's being worked upon. It should almost be done here shortly, and we'll have that up and running. That was an aspect of the CARES funding to establish a bunk room. It's going to house 2 bunk beds in one of the rooms and 1 single bed in another room. This will provide the opportunity for individuals, if they want to stay in the fire station and they're able to answer calls, they would have that opportunity. Of course, we're going to have to put some restrictions, and the doors are going to have fobs, so we'll be able to identify who goes into the room and who doesn't. There's a department, I want to say in Maryland, Hyattsville. They actually have a live-in program to where if you want to live at the fire station, you're more than welcome to. You have to answer calls. You go to work in the morning, you do your work for 8 hours, whatever. You go to the firehouse, it's your apartment.
Wow.
You stay in the apartment, and your job is to answer calls if there's something that goes off. So it's a neat idea. Not saying that we're going to pursue it, but if we could get people in the fire station, response times will definitely decrease.
Yeah.
Let's see. County and building inspector, big thing. Dean Lewis went to get certified to enforce certain fire codes. We were kind of on the leading edge of implementing a Knox box ordinance. But little did we know throughout this whole process until we started saying, well, they didn't put a Knox box on their building. Here's the code. You need to enforce it. He had no legal authority to enforce it. So it was a beautiful piece of paper with nothing to stand behind. So fortunately, the county did send him to this training, and he will be able to enforce this ordinance in addition to other fire codes. I believe he was just a building inspector. If I remember correctly, he could not enforce fire codes unless they were in the building inspector role.
He's gotten a lot of, the county expects a lot out of him. He's doing a lot of things.
Soil erosion.
I mean, I just wonder if the county needs to hire another couple people with all the growth going on.
personally think it would be an excellent idea. And
Yeah.
it'd be great for Nottaway County to have a fire marshal or somebody that can make sure that all these plans and
Agree.
apartments that are going up are truthfully to appropriate code.
Yep.
So it's a lot from going residential to a hotel and understanding that code.
Yeah.
So
I would imagine all the good news, Chief, you correct me if I'm wrong, all this new construction, of course, is sprinklered and their new standards, but when you think about the risk, our community's risk of, I hate to say it, of a tragedy with the fire has gone up immensely in the last couple of years with the new construction. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, and it's only the more people you pack into one spot, the higher the risk becomes for both the firefighters and the individuals that live there.
Right.
Just Main Street is a prime example.
Apartments of a business that the corner kitchen could have been a real bad situation.
Yep. So it definitely, prevention is key, and it's a full-time job. So several years of services got awarded this year. We also moved up our junior fire chief, Will West, who came back to us, I want to say 2 months ago. He graduated from the Marine Corps, and he got accepted into the seniors, and we also accepted Mr. Robert Foster onto probationary status. He was previously on Crew Fire Department, from my understanding, and then moved into our fire district and joined as well.
Very good. Great report, Chief. Any questions of our fire chief?
I got one. That's puzzle. You said the sirens go off at what time now?
They are only supposed to activate them, the fire siren, that is, just strictly fire, is from 9 to 9.
9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Did I
After
say
9
that right? 8 to 8, sorry.
Yeah, 8 to 8. And then on weekends, 12 noon to 8.
12 noon to 8.
Right.
Unless for some reason a fire officer says, I need you to set off the sirens because we don't have people showing up, something's going on, they could request the sheriff's office to activate them.
And then, of course, the first Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock, you have the long continuous tone, which is the weather test.
And then anytime there's a warning
In Nottaway County.
in Nottaway County as a whole, the siren will activate.
Is there a place or a cheat sheet to know what each tone means? I get asked that pretty frequently.
It's just two.
Honestly, I don't have
It's only two tones.
If it's a solid tone, it's weather related. If it's
Up,
and
down.
it's fire related.
Yeah.
There is a third tone that hopefully we'll never hear, and that's a civil defense tone. And
I've
that,
had a few meetings here where I thought I had to use it, but otherwise it's pretty.
hopefully we'll never have to activate the civil defense tone, but the two ones are the weather that
Not lately, not with this
will
council.
blow windows out. The emergency services coordinator is actually looking at the opportunity for a county-wide siren system,
Oh, that'd be nice to live next to that.
which will, it'll replace ours.
Oh, okay.
So, and it will actually be if we have an activation in a zip code versus
Right.
county.
Because what's happened, what I do worry, y'all, we've all done it. I found myself knowing that the tornado warning, a lot of times they come down 360 and hit 307, and I've kind of got numb to that warning. I still get in the closet with the dogs, but it's like,
One day it's gonna come here.
but it's just, yeah, right. And it's kind of lowered our guard. I think that's a good idea for zip code specific.
So we're hoping to get that. He's also looking at Code Red as well to have the county take over that, which I think would be a good blessing as well, because currently town residents to get county notifications have to sign up for county Code Red and Town of Blackstone Code Red. And I think there's some confusion there, and people are missing messages. And if the county would take over that premise and the dispatchers do it, and then we would contact the dispatcher to put off a Code Red, and I'm sure Madam Clerk would also get access so she could continue.
She does a great job with that.
But would also be able to narrow down the alerts. So you could pick a circle and say, I just want alerts to go to this area. If
Right.
there's a missing person, I just want alerts to go to this area instead of blasting
Right.
everybody, or water's going to be messed up on Main Street. All Main Street residents will get that notification and not the whole town.
I would like to clarify that my wife and I, with the dogs, my wife Gets in the closet. Not just me, the dog.
Good job.
Make sure people watching. Joyce in there first. Any questions about fire chief? Any questions? As you can see, folks, so they got a full plate and they're volunteers, and we're lucky to have them. Thank you, chief.
And we did get time frame on the latter. We're supposed to do pre-build conference in September,
Okay.
which we expect in June. I do question, and the sales rep actually called me during the meeting. They're estimated a month and a half build time, which I do not believe whatsoever with an April delivery time frame. So I strongly think that delivery is going to be past April now into the summer months, because it took them 4 months to build the engine. I don't see a aerial device in a month.
Sign that contract so bad, it's a reduction.
On the roll.
Rather than take their
got
time
your
and get it
money,
right,
yeah,
I don't mind 2 or
they
3 extra
got
months of
your
waiting.
money.
Right.
Very good.
All right.
You are talking about in 2023,
3.
yes.
Correct.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
chief.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have before you payment of bills. The first batch totals $1,039,865.87. These are in your packet on page 74. These are checks not yet approved.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any questions about these?
This may be a Miss Hardy question. There's 2 invoices for Highview Solutions totaling over $6,000 for email usage. I don't know. I hope we're not paying for us to have townofblackstoneVA.com emails that much.
It probably is, Miss.
Hopefully, if that's the case, it's a 5-year deal.
I mean, how long does that last?
Is that an annual or a 5-year deal?
So these are 2 different, I think it's quarterly, maybe?
I've never seen them before.
We may need to check into that. We may be going to gmail.com or something.
Yeah, just need,
I mean, for $6,000 for a quarter?
yeah, I was
Let's
thinking,
check.
let's,
We'll
let's,
go check it.
we could approve it contingent upon,
It just seems a little.
no, good point, Mr. Nash, good
And then
call.
there was one other one. I don't know where it is now. I'll think of it in a minute.
Wasn't Crew Medical Center?
Yes, it was. COVID testing. $1,400?
So that was back, I think it was like a 2021 invoice that just, they had never sent us. We kept asking over and over.
Does insurance not pay for our COVID testing?
We were trying to get it, paid with the CARES money, but obviously that's been sent back. I had emailed Katie and asked if.
I really feel like our insurance,
I'm
even if it
surprised our
was for
insurance.
volunteers, I saw Chief raise his hand.
I believe that was our COVID
Yeah,
outbreak.
During the ice storm?
It was
I still feel like our insurance ought to be able to foot that bill.
Yeah,
Can
I
somebody
agree.
check with the insurance company?
I can look into it.
Yeah, that'd be great, because, I mean, I think, what's it, what, $55,000 a month we pay in insurance, somewhere in there?
If CARES money, which I think has sunsetted, it's not available, we also have, I believe, ARPA funds that may be able to cover
Yeah.
it, or.
Either way, it's gonna come out of the town at that point's pocket.
Right.
We'll see
I really like insurance too.
the best reimbursement.
It's nice to see that they're not in a hurry to bill Crew Medical. It's very nice of them to,
I got a question. On this $10,835 paid to Talbot and Bright Professional Services,
airport.
Talbot and Bright is your airport engineer, and they're the ones that have done the design work. If you remember, we received a planning grant or an initial grant for the engineering services, and I think this is completion of, if not completion, nearly the completion of the design services, because there's already been a contract let with J.R. Caskey, the firm. Talbot and Bright is actually the engineer that did the design work.
Hence the reason it's reimbursed.
It should be
reimbursed through
reimbursable
the
from
grant.
Department of Aviation grant funds.
But good, hey, these are good questions, and these bills, these are open for public inspection. Anybody in the audience has a question, you're free to get a copy of these bills. We do have a motion to approve in a second. Any further questions? I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Scott.
Aye.
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 That motion carries 5-0 with 2 absentees. And the next batch, broken down by department, total $971,238.04. These are bills to be paid, broken down by department. I'd entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded. Discussion? Again, these are the people's bills. They're open for public inspection.
Bid C under the police, we've got 2 reimbursed bills for just over $3,500 for weapons supply. That was a grant, I guess.
I believe it was a grant.
Okay, Southern Police Equipment.
Yes, sir.
Is that replacing firearms every so years? Don't we have to replace firearms every so often?
Well, we do that every so often, but that I believe is for less lethal equipment.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. Any others? I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Scott.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Under appropriations, there are none. That brings us to the Accountant Finance Committee. We'll have our committee reports now, and we will start with Accountant Finance. That's Mr. Nash's committee.
Nothing to report. It was simply listening to budget requests, which we heard a lot.
All right. We're getting
Especially
ready.
the chief we just talked to.
All right. Mr. Miller, your committee, the Personnel, Employment, and Police.
Well, there's nothing to report as of yet. We're
Okay.
still progressing. We don't have a closed session tonight, right?
We have a closed session, I believe, on a potential litigation matter, I believe. Or has that been resolved?
Personnel.
Consultation with legal counsel
Right.
and, in a personnel matter which is applicable to water and wastewater treatment.
Okay. Now, the Street and Light Committee,
Hold on, there was one recommendation, I think, from y'all in there about the electric department pay scale. Do y'all wanna skip over that or?
Oh, yeah. We approved it. We ready to bring it before council.
now,
If
If you
nobody,
don't mind, and I'm certainly not opposed to this, but I would like to look at it across the board, not just in the electric department. I fully support this, but maybe I can come back to you guys with it across the board for police and, water
budget,
treatment.
maybe budget-wise, look across the budget. And just for the audience benefit, this is a,
so you want to table it for
If
this?
you don't mind.
Please, in the budget is what I would prefer, yes.
yeah. Trying to come up with scales and benchmarks for employees after they reach a certain number of years and they've had good service. That, you know where when you get a job, you kind of have an idea where you can head. I think it's a good idea, but I agree. I think it's something looks at townwide in the budget. But thank you for that, Mr. Miller. Under Street and Light, this is Mr. Allman's. Is this Mr. Allman's committee? Isn't it?
That's me.
I was here.
Okay, well then it's your committee.
He was over
Congratulations. And a big issue here. I know we have some folks from Pickett Court. Traffic calming devices, also referred to as speed bumps. Mr. Van Norbeck.
And I will give you, and I have included for your consideration, there's a lot of stuff in there about truck routes and that sort of thing, but we bring to your attention more specifically the traffic calming policy. And I have it marked as draft, and it's included in your packet. And the Police and Employment Committee was not able to make a recommendation. We did not have a quorum at the last meeting, but indeed there is a policy before you, and if approved, would set the framework for how to determine whether a street is appropriate for a traffic calming device or speed bumps, and the process by which it is done. Makes good sense to me. I understand it. The one question I have is I may need some help maybe from the street committee to determine a neighborhood, because there are some benchmarks that have to be made. A certain number or a certain percentage of the residents in a neighborhood have to agree to certain things, and there's
Define the lines.
maybe some help defining the neighborhood lines, and that's probably the most nebulous part of this
You
request.
get input from the neighbors too, right?
I think there is a process where the neighbors do.
But what he's saying is, suppose a bunch of folks on Brunswick Avenue say, I want one in front of my house. Well, that affects a lot of people, not just Billy and Joyce Colburn, but people, how far out do you go to get their input?
Do we go 2 blocks, 10 blocks, 12 blocks? I think there's going to need to be some
I agree.
process whereby we define a neighborhood and fairly, and I think Pickett Court's pretty defined.
Obviously, those that must use that section of street
Yeah,
to
Pickett
do
Court.
their daily
yeah,
egress,
yeah.
not people that are 12 blocks away that can go another way.
Yeah, Pickett Court, in my mind, the whole circle would have input because everyone, once you go in Pickett Court, you got to go all the way through it. But
I think Ms. Lax, or,
And
was
Oak
it you got the
Street, too.
petition up? Yeah. So the petition she did, and that's included in your packet.
I think that's a great place to start, personally. Pickett Court's ideal.
It's the most logical.
And go up to Melvin.
Do you?
I think it makes the most sense,
That's
because
the race
for one,
track.
it's too narrow to fit a snowplow through, so you don't end up with that counter argument, and like you said, it's not a through road, so I think it's an appropriate place.
You sure can, Miss Jean Lax. Yes, ma'am.
If we're gonna get these speed bumps, I don't care what. We will get them,
I believe you.
but How many do we have, can we tell you how many we want?
You can
We
tell us
probably need
how
3.
many you
We
want,
need at least 4.
but there's a process whereby the town's engineer will look at the appropriateness and the location and layout and all that sort of thing. So it may be 2, it may be 3, I don't know however many it's
At
gonna be.
least 2 makes, I know that like if I enter Pickett Court, obviously that's probably a place where, you know, you can start to get some speed. Now, as we get near the horseshoe, anyone that speeds there is obviously risking
That's
their,
where they speed,
Yes.
they
So you-
speed
They
around
do.
that
My papa almost got hit, and my niece almost got hit, and I almost got ran over, and
So
they're
ma-
going the wrong way.
so maybe as you enter the horseshoe and come out of the horseshoe, maybe,
Feels here.
you know,
You make it that
But
You
there,
said they're going the wrong way?
Yes.
yeah,
It's
well, you'd be
only
surprised the
one
number
way.
of cars that go through there the wrong way.
This
Yeah,
week, you
that-
can even ask the neighborhood people.
really.
I swear on everything.
Oh, you think they're doing it ignorantly or they're doing it on purpose?
They're doing it ignorantly, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we discussed the
But,
need for
uh,
a sign on,
From,
one of the ends.
On the exit side, exit only.
I believe one of
People
them
use it as
does
a
not have
shortcut
sign.
from
Yeah.
another neighborhood. There's a neighborhood, I don't know what that is, right at the middle of that.
MacArthur Drive?
Forest
Yeah, right in
Drive.
the middle of that
Forest
horseshoe, they cut through straight down that alley.
Kinston Forest is famous for that.
Oh, okay, I can see that now, okay.
And don't cut through to go ahead and go to that main road to get to that traffic light right there, you know, where the country store is. I'm sorry, I
Gotcha.
don't know the name of the roads, but, I actually think that alley should be just from the main road going in and maybe road block it on that top of the horseshoe, and you won't have people firing straight across there. Because
Right.
we've had animals have,
Yeah.
be hit there, and almost one child got hit, because somebody was just scooting right down that alley to get to the road.
Well, I think that, I mean, that's an
witnessed
easier
that.
fix is the alley. I mean, that could be done
There was some discussion in the street committee about making it one way through there,
through the alley.
making the alley one way, or excuse me, not one way, blocking the alley at the Pickett Court loop. I just caution you, garbage truck's gonna have to pull in and
But-
back up out of there.
Most of
Still
the
in there.
children in our neighborhood are from number 5 through number 10. Then on the other side, they're from 15 all the way down.
Yeah.
During the summer, I mean, you've never seen so many children.
Yeah.
They come to visit and stay, and there are just too many children to have people speeding through there.
We need to expedite this, in my opinion. It's like I say, like Mr. Allman said, it's a perfect place to start, and maybe this could be something catching on. I know that Mr. Benoit, you've mentioned, you know, over time, there's certainly maintenances, the more vehicles that go over them, that could, you know, a little bit more pressure on the road, but,
If it's agreeable to council, if you would adopt the policy,
okay.
unless you have some changes or modifications, and I think we can still come back and do that. And then, if you look at step number 2, it says the town manager will determine eligibility of the street for traffic calming. If it is found eligible and support from a homeowners association or at least 10% of the residents, if no homeowners association and the council approves studying the street, proceed to step 3. If council would authorize me to proceed to step 3, and I will, in the meantime, send out some kind of a letter or something, or a survey to the neighbors and say, we need 10% of the, based on the policy.
Well,
that-
We got 40-some of them.
So
Yeah.
maybe we circulate some sort of
Four
a,
here.
Cause there's
petition
like
or
3
something.
houses or 2 empty around there.
and if you guys could help me, I just need 10% of the residents in the Pickett Court neighborhood to say, Grace, that they're interested in at least pursuing it, and then,
Are you asking council to adopt the traffic calming policy so as presented, the draft?
please,
And that we might come back and tweak it at a later date?
need to tweak it,
I'd
yeah.
entertain that as a motion, entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Mr. Miller has moved, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Allman is second, any further discussion? This is just the policy, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries 5-0.
And pending a 10% response from the neighborhood, I'd like to go ahead and start the study, and,
I was gonna say, I don't think you need to do step 1.
No.
Submit a traffic
The requ-
calming request.
the
That's
request has been
request.
made, yeah.
But this council would approve, upon staff's recommendation, this council would approve the location and the number of traffic calming devices.
Using the VDOT guidelines, and make sure our engineer is satisfied with it.
So our next step would be to define the neighborhood, is that correct?
Well, I think the neighborhood can be defined. I think we can
Pickett
maybe
Court's
go
easy.
through that step. But I think the next step that has not been completed is states that 10% of the residents, 10% of the households need to respond favorably about studying these,
Do we know what that number would be for Pickett Court?
gosh,
There's only 40 homes in there.
40 homes? Is it up to 40?
You only
4 of
need
them.
4 homes.
1, 2,
3, 4.
3.
That's a lot of,
You got
we got a
4
lot of
homes.
So you only need 10% approval?
You got a petition?
You're here now.
Yeah.
There's 5 of y'all here right now.
I mean, we've already got
We
the
got a
approval.
whole.
There you go.
I says proceed. Let's
We'll
proceed.
proceed on to step number
Proceed
3.
with the recommendation from the,
The town manager.
Yes, I entertain a motion to proceed on Pickett Court with the recommendation of town manager. I would entertain that as a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Miller has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Allman, second it.
Also, parking.
All right, let's do this first. All in favor, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, I rode through there the other day in a small car, a little car, Equinox, and 2 trucks and SUVs on each side. That is, I mean, you can't fly through there one like that. I can tell you that. But we've been through we've talked about this for 10 years on what side of the road to make people park on.
Well, Philip suggested at the street meeting that you put in, what do you call it?
curb cuts, driveways.
Entrances, yeah.
Your entrances for each house.
There's enough yard for that? I mean, it's,
Yeah, the town has, how many yards, how many feet has the town got?
We have a 50-foot right-of-way, so there's, and going back in history, for you as a board rep, there was actually some discussion about moving the curb line in 8 feet, which would accommodate that parking, because, gosh, how long ago was that? 8 years ago, 9 years ago, there was a request that we do something with the parking. I think there was a fire down there, and fire rescue and all that sort of thing getting through. I think that it fell into some disfavor with some of the residents over there that they would lose the parking on the inside. So we did, B&B gave me some cost estimates, and it was pretty pricey, but to move the curb line
was
on
a
the
$250,000.
inside,
It was a
$250,000.
$250,000.
It was.
To me, the cheapest way to go would be to fix the alleys where they wouldn't flood and put in gravel driveway for each house.
Right.
To me, but, I mean, I'm only one person.
But I think the cheapest way would be to, yes, work on the alleys and make sure there's entrances going into every property on the inside circle, but at the same time, post that inside lane, no parking.
You can only
Because you're
park
not solving anything unless
you can only park on the right-hand side of the street.
you'd have to park on the right-hand street.
Inside would park behind their house.
Right.
Have anything.
Everybody on
We
the
don't own
s-
alley, correct?
Pardon?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't own the alley.
We do not have any more than an access easement through there. We don't own the alley. It wasn't platted originally, but I think we found a 1955 survey where the property owners had asked that the town begin picking up trash in the alley rather in the front. And so there was either a prescriptive or it was a drawn easement where the town can come back and forth. It was specific to garbage is what it is. We don't have the electric utilities other than streetlights in the neighborhood. And Southside may have some easements.
When you send this letter out for the,
I don't think we have to do that. I think your 10% is here, so.
Yeah. We're gonna bypass that.
Yeah.
I think you should maybe send a letter out and ask the people which they'd rather have.
On the parking.
On the
But as a compromise, can we get your dear husband, who I love to death, to withdraw his bill to the town of Blackstone for the grass cutting over the years?
I don't know.
That was the best move ever. I love that move.
Right now, my husband is not able to cut grass.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And he says, he's always saying, you reckon the town would come by and cut my grass?
We owe him a few loops. Give him our best. Members of council, what do we want to do on the parking? Do we want to activate that again with the?
Let Philip send out letters, or Miss Hart, or Miss Daniel.
Yep. All right. What else do we have on the street and light committee? Y'all had a healthy agenda. What else recommendation wise is
I
there?
got
Traffic
a
Have any
question.
recommendations?
Okay.
Because I couldn't make it.
No quorum.
We'll touch base on just very quickly on a couple of things. I think traffic calming we've talked about, pick a court parking we've touched on. Traffic study. There's a lot in here, but I'll give you the breakdown of what Officer Matthias found from working with VDOT on our truck route. I think the town of Blackstone, and Billy, you may remember, the town of Blackstone intended a truck route from Main Street onto Church and then a right on Brown Street when going north to Dinwiddie Avenue and log trucks, and then back onto Main Street to bypass the downtown area where it's very narrow. Okay, there's a lot of documentation in there, but VDOT has communicated with Officer Matthias that indeed they don't support a truck route using Brown Street and the intersection of Church. What they recommend, if you do it, take it to Mill Street and go around behind Velvet Textiles next to Shiloh Baptist Church and bring it back out to Brown Street there. because they don't feel if a truck is coming down Brown Street and wants to make a left turn onto Church, that there's enough storage area. I think that they're concerned that it's not far enough from that Main Street intersection.
I've worried about that from the whole time. It's the fact if you've got traffic backed up at Church, and you got an 18-wheeler making a left turn,
And it's,
good luck.
yeah.
It caused an issue with backing it up at a possible response issue with the fire department.
Right, and I whip through when I get back, I whip through Crenshaw parking lot. If I look ahead and say, oh, they're 6 deep, and the one in front of me is making a left, I'm going through Crenshaw and coming out by the fire station and
So
going
I
home.
don't think there was
Hear that, chief?
a flat out no about a truck route, but VDOT's recommending using Mill Street and bring it up next to Shiloh.
by
and
the side of the fire station.
yeah, between the fire station and.
I don't understand how you're gonna enforce somebody to go, I mean, that's making 3 extra turns and.
The trucker's going to pick the straight line. I mean, if it's voluntary, the trucker's going to go straight. Now, if you make it mandatory, but I'm like you, man. Brown Street alone, which is for a lot of folks, it looks wide enough. You have no idea when you leave my little office at 5 o'clock and want to make a left turn on the Brown to go home. You'd be shocked at the volume of traffic now.
Yep.
Which is fine. These are small town problems to have. But coming up besides Shiloh, Mill Street, right by the railroad tracks, there is just I just can't.
You'd have to
envision.
rebuild a good. It's good until you get to the parking lot of the fire station, but it's not a road
My
really
concern, I
beyond
just
that.
said was, all right, if you get bottlenecked down at the fire station, and you get a row of tractor trailers, and we have a fire call, are the fire department members gonna get into the parking lot? I mean,
No.
so,
We did discuss, which I don't know if this is viable or not, more of a truck suggestion, where you could at least try to alleviate some of the truck traffic coming from Walmart, going to the other side of Main Street, where then you could, hey, suggest a truck route, make a left on Church, right on
Brown.
like
Yeah,
Brown,
yeah.
and then go around where you could at least alleviate. Again, it would
Some
be
of
all up. It would be all up to a suggestion, because from what I remember, we can't
Mandate.
truck route without VDOT's approval. Correct.
I think that's correct. I think it needs to meet a VDOT standard for you to
But what
mandate.
Jake says, though, that's less trouble-free. That's less problems. You know, the only problem you have there is the red light. Once they make the left turn onto Church and can swing around the Episcopal Church and go down Brown, they're out of Main Street.
But didn't they say something about the turn-in radius on that?
Well, actually, I think
They're
they
doing
were
that now.
improved.
Yeah.
Years ago, I think
yeah.
at the Episcopal Church, there was a lot of radius improvements. I think the intention from council was to make it a truck route of sorts, but I think they probably fell
their
upon the
issue
same
is
issue that
when
it
you're coming
wasn't
from this
ideal.
direction going, that is not enough lane distance on Church between Brown Street and Main Street.
Yeah.
You really have no,
Yeah,
you
I
know, pull one
understand
truck
that,
and do
right,
it.
It wasn't a very good solution for,
Right.
for that direction. Now, with the truck suggestion route,
Right.
that, you could at least alleviate some of the truck on truck.
That's
passing
probably a third or fourth, maybe as much as half the traffic is coming from the south. But let me ask y'all this, and I honestly forgotten the answer. Is what's driving this? Is it the folks who get their side mirrors clipped? Or is it the fact that it's noise and congestion downtown that downtown
I
doesn't?
think it's the safety issue that I've heard. Is
Because-
the windows, we had somebody had their rearview mirror broken this.
I'm gonna tell you something. One of the smartest people I know, I'll tell you right now, a lot of people, Woodson Irby, has gone out and measured. And if you measure from curb to curb at the town square, it's 44 feet. You go up to where Spencer's Drug and across from Watkins, and it's 39 feet.
Narrows down.
One thing Woodson says there's 2 ways to fix it real cheap. Eliminate the 2 parking places in front of the drive-through branch of Citizens Bank and Trust Company, where no one's allowed to park beside that branch. And he said the other part, I believe, was to shave about 6 inches off the sidewalk on one of those sides. And you then,
We'd have to push the curb and gutter in.
right, there'd be less sidewalk for the people, but just along that stretch. It's basically, it's a quarter block on each side of Spencer's, of Broad Street, where it does, and we all know it narrows,
I
but
wonder why it narrows, what the history is.
Historically, I don't know the history. It just,
Why it wasn't a straight.
how did that work?
no clue.
I mean, it's been so many years ago. That's probably in the 20s or earlier, certainly when they.
Well,
put
you
it.
have a conversation on Main Street with somebody, especially that doesn't have a loud voice. There's some days you're like, well, look, loud, take care, and good to see you. You can't talk. But then again, those truckers are big to our economy, and those truckers, no one's more aware of the routes and the quickest ways than a trucker. They know all, I mean, they talk to each other, and like I say, the straight line is always the shortest point. It's, but a lot of those mirrors, I must state, as someone who hears on the scanner, Chief, you can back me up. Sometimes they're hit and runs, but a lot of the offenders are passenger vehicles or SUVs. They're not the logging trucks that take the mirrors off. Am I right or wrong on that?
No, that's true. That's true.
So, the truck,
I just don't park in that section.
no,
I fold the mirrors.
right.
Well, either.
What do we want to do about this, folks? The hour's already getting a little late. What do we want to do on the,
I don't know if it's any
more
good
study?
suggestion to do. I mean,
I don't know the solution.
I don't either.
Let's look into the suggested truck route sign or something like that. Maybe there is something that is out there. Maybe Chief and I can
Yeah,
at
see
least
if
for the
Just for
northbound.
one
for the
direction.
northbound and put something like right there at the Hickman House or something like that. Trying to
And we can talk to some trucking companies. I mean, heck, a lot of our truck traffic is generated by, I bet you half of it's by the same companies, loggers, whatever. Say, look, could y'all do us a favor? They might be able to do it.
I can say, I pull a gooseneck a couple days a week normally, and if I'm coming from Walmart and I'm going back to the airport, I'm making the left and making the right on Brown and then going
Yep.
the back way.
Yep.
Because it's tight and also I don't want to stop at the lights.
That's right. All right. What else under street and light?
ditches. Sheila's not here, but I have had a lot of email and letter traffic in regards to Northwest Avenue.
Take care, Chief.
There is a ditch that is really encroaching. It is private property, but it is encroaching on Robert Evans's house. If you're familiar which house that is, that White House. If you look at it, it's pretty tough. It's not a great situation. It is on private property. I would have to survey to determine if it's all on him or partially on him or on the adjacent property owner. But I think one meeting previous, perhaps there was some interest in trying to figure out what it would cost. If you look at the cost that was put together, it includes the north and the east and the west side. I think Mr. Somerville has complained on several occasions about the ditch next to his house, again, on private property. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'll put my glasses on, estimate from B&B Consultants to pipe those ditches, both sides in, would be $87,650. Okay. At the same time, there was also concern, and this has been ongoing, with Philip Arms's home over on Dillard Street. And this is a ditch that runs in behind Mr. Miller's home. And we didn't keep on going. I think that their estimate is only for 100 feet of piping, which would take it approximately to the back of his yard, or back of his, where the grass is in his yard. And that estimate was $51,050. They're on private property. And I would ask that you guys let me know what you want to do. I mean, you're in a terrible spot, I get it. And Mr. Evans ultimately could affect his house. It is eroding enough that it's getting towards the foundation of his home.
Years ago, there was a situation down on Sullivan Street with Mr. May,
Yes.
and the town went down there. I mean, he was this driveway was about to fall into a ditch.
We did that one because, believe it or not, there was a sewer line in that ditch bank.
Yep.
And so we put a lot of rock and
We
rip
had
wrap
an
and that sort of
easement
thing.
on that. That's why
Get that
was-
right. And just
Yeah.
like Linda Blevins on 6th Street, their town fingerprints on that project, not because, hey, it's Linda and we know her or whatever. It's the town had done it before. It was
We installed the pipe.
Right, the town had installed the pipe. So the only, like I said, I'm all for solving people's problems. And Mr. Arms, when I first ran for mayor, he showed me the size of the ditch. It's quadrupled. But once you do this, you can expect, if we do 2 tonight, you can expect 6 by next year to do.
You have a lot more requests. Yeah. I
I
just.
would like to know what other towns do. Is there any kind of data on that? I mean, can we go to?
Call around.
Even if we
Call
go
town
to-
managers and ask them.
Call Farmville and Cambridge and South Hill. Call Farmville and South Hill.
I mean, you figure just those 2 ditches, you're looking at
$100,000.
$140,000. That's a lot of money.
I'm just not educated enough in if the water's coming off the street, does that make it our problem? If the water's
Right.
not coming off the
And
street?
VML,
it's
listen,
private.
let's talk to Virginia Municipal League. Find out what is it, what are they found on this, because this is not a situation unique to Blackstone.
I got that ditch that you talking about by Somerville's house. Isn't that up there where we was talking about where they dumped their waste from up there or something?
Pretty close. What it is, it comes out from under the railroad. And I think it actually comes from where Walter Mack's building is and areas there on Division Street. And it comes under the railroad, and it's not nearly as eroded. It's not great, and it's a open ditch and kind of overgrown and probably no fun to weed eat or do whatever. I think I've even seen emails where he's complaining of snakes and harborage of rodents and that sort of thing. But the Robert Evans side is, if you drive by it, and I'll take anybody over to look at it, that's appreciably eroding. The town has a 30-foot drainage easement, which is a square that extends 30 feet onto the private property, but that's as far as it goes. And that's basically where the pipe stops. And those came off the original construction drawings from when the town and VDOT collaborated and had Northwest Avenue built long before my time. But no easy answers.
I've been to some of those ditches, folks, and look at it. I remember Mr. Mays down on Sullivan Street back in the 90s, and I went there one morning, and he said, yeah, there's a ditch, and all of a sudden I looked out there, and all of a sudden it's like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Snakes just kind of, just like a whole line of snakes just waking up for the day, getting ready. I'm like, man, just, and I've heard Mr. Somerville say the same thing.
Mr. Somerville is complaining.
Yeah.
Those are your numbers, and I will canvass 2 or 3 other towns. Alta Vista is almost
Yeah,
the same size.
Yeah, let's
what we can do.
put this, not put it on the back burner, but set it aside for tonight and get some more information. Because this will have repercussions on the budget, and of course, I know some other folks who've said they're aware of these ditches. If y'all do those ditches, I'm at the next council meeting. I mean, true story.
Likely.
I mean,
Rightfully so, though.
right, and rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Correct. Anything else on street light before we get into the rest of our agenda?
I would like authorization to clean out the ditch behind Miss Davenport's house on Luke Street. We cleaned out a section of ditch next to Miss Rose's house, which faces Green Street, perhaps. I hope I get that right. But we cleaned out a section in there one time because there is an alley that runs through there. In the event we get off the alley and enter on the private property, the intention is to clean the alley area out. Okay, and I'd like authorization to do that. I don't think it's unreasonable because there is an alley through there, and we have worked on, I believe, Ms. Rhodes' the ditch next to her house. And if it's agreeable to council, the intention is to stay in the alley. But if we get off the alley trying to make this thing work,
Used alley?
Huh?
Is it a used alley?
no, it's an unopened alley. It's just woods or an old ditch that's overgrown.
There's a lot of problem with water and stuff.
I will tell you, I wasn't there today, but during one of the big storms, either Carolyn called me or notified, or the people called me or whatever, and I went out there and there was a lot of water standing in the backyard.
What is council's pleasure on Mr. Vernobeck's request?
So moved.
Mr. Miller has moved. Is there a second?
I second it.
Ms. Williams is seconded. Any further discussion?
Is this gonna be town, or are you gonna hire?
No, I'll probably start with the town, see if Wallace and the guys can get in there.
Could,
I will, I agree that it should be done, but I will have to vote no, just for the simple fact that it's not a used alley.
It's an unopened alley.
Unopened
That's
alleyway,
correct.
so I'm worried about the issue of, can those people then come up and say, technically it's private property currently? I mean,
Well, no, it is platted and owned by the town.
Yeah, it's
No,
owned by
you
the
own
town.
fee simple ownership of that 20-foot strip that runs down through there. That's part of it, but I can't tell you without having a physical survey conducted that
where it's at.
3 feet may not be over on her property or something.
it would be nice, and if y'all could just keep track of what it roughly costs, just to give us an idea, it'd be nice. Any other members of council before we have a roll call vote?
So
Yes, sir.
how, with, I know you don't have certainty, but
Mhm.
you believe this ditch is on town property?
I believe the majority of the ditch is on town property. It's in the center of the street. There's a culvert under the road. And if I'm not mistaken, we did Miss Rhodes. I believe that's Miss Rhodes that lives on the house that
the
faces
corner
the
right
side.
I think so.
And we cleaned that out, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so the water flows off of her, but it
It's
gets
been
hung
an
up on
ongoing
the.
problem for years. Ms. Davenport called. She said this is not the first time she mentioned it to me. She has mentioned it in the past.
Not saying I would, because we vacated this section of road, but before, when I moved into where we're at, you've got Brunswick Avenue that continues straight through. So because it's platted,
Just because it's platted means that the town owns that Brunswick Avenue extension.
so.
But I think we abandoned it when we
did,
reoriented the
yeah,
lots.
Yeah, that's why, but, I mean, that's a large section. I mean, if it were open and somebody would come up and say, hey, we want you to clean out that ditch that runs all the way through there, even though I get your point, I understand, but
That's, you know the deal, and hopefully I've explained it, but we did, Ms. Rhodes,
we
With
have a
the
better
same
leg to stand on
explanation
with this one, yes, because
that
it
we
is a
had.
platted.
a platted right of way or a platted alleyway back there.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Nash, for your clarification on that. We'll head on to unfinished business. Oh, yes.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Also the trees that are on that, there's a lady at the corner.
Oh, Luke Street, yep.
Gertrude Jones.
Okay.
She calls me on a weekly basis about these trees that, are on town property, and one hangs over her driveway and one hangs over her shed, and she says they're on town property and she would like them topped off. And I
Where is
told
this
her that we would refer it to the committee, and we didn't have a quorum there, but I'd like to give her some direction, cause she does call me quite often concerned about the tree.
As a matter of standard, I don't know if this is a council policy, if it's a living tree, we usually don't do a whole lot unless the power lines
Let's
are
do a
involved.
power line.
But these are gum trees, and I do believe they're on town property because the right of ways are very wide there, just like they are on Brunswick or 7th Street or 6th Street, because it's part of the same West Blackstone plat. I believe the trees are on the town, and they're probably having a gum tree over top of my house or over top of my car probably would be a nuisance. And I do believe the trees are ours, but as a matter of practice, we ask you because there's no power lines involved, and this is more of a nuisance to an
You
adjacent
just want
property.
some tops, right? And want them removed and all that.
She just, yes.
What is council's pleasure?
Do we have a cost estimate?
Pardon?
Is there an estimate? Is that something we're gonna do?
Our town guys can do that. Electric
I think the
crews.
country's not gonna be so big, so.
It's not massive or anything. We're just getting the top two. It's just a matter of cutting.
You remember the other day, I brought it to your attention about, okay, we just built this new apartment. And what's happening is the stuff is running into the gutter and stuff. So I asked Philip, because, hey, we spent money, right?
Where's this?
Right there where John Hill's apartments.
yeah.
So we need to get that tree out the way.
We
Because
will.
what it's doing
We just need to let it dry out enough so we can
Right,
back
okay,
a piece of equipment to it. This house, Ms. Jones is on Luke Street. I think you can set up in the street still and reach over and get it. So it's not nearly as concerning.
You've heard the town manager's recommendation. He believes the trees are mostly or all on town property. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Motion been made and seconded. Mr. Miller is seconded to top out those trees. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Folks, we're on a pace of about midnight. Cox Road water line. It's only been on the agenda for about 3 years. Not because we haven't been one to act, but the county's been.
And I'm sad to report this, but in July of 2019, the town council authorized me to write a letter to the county as a result of Ms. Himes and I think some of the other residents up there came to town council, and I think they weren't sure whether it was a town responsibility, county responsibility, but they wanted to get potable water run up North Main Street, what is Cox Road in the county. At the time in 2019, the cost estimate was $1.4 million roughly. And we asked the county, in the event the town were to choose to do this, then we would need a mandatory connection. It's nice to get the revenue, but that few number of homes will never pay for that water line by themselves anyhow. The purpose of needing a mandatory connection is to keep the water fresh and keep it moving. Otherwise, you're going to have bacteria issues.
The Animal Clinic, Wilburn's Grocery, all those places, Frankie Williams' place, they'd all have to use the water.
So if you look at the attachments that I have here, there's a cost estimate. I'll give you a little history so you got it very briefly. Back in the fall, or even earlier this year, I can't remember the date, but we had a little meeting of the Cox Road residents. Mr. Costin and Sherman Vaughn attended. Ms. Himes was here, several others, and we all talked about the opportunity to get this water line. At the time, I was thinking $1.4 million. Okay, using some SEER cap money, some grant money to make the connections, asking town to waive the tap fees. But I needed to get this mandatory connection done beforehand. At that same meeting, Mr. Dudley, who owns the Cox Lumber property, who has some interest in opening a treatment works or reopening the treatment plant over there, is a big water user, potentially a big water user. And he came to see me before the meeting, and I've spoken to him since. Eric and I were on the phone one morning, and I drove by, and he was actually at the property. He's still very interested in the water. So I proposed to Mr. Costin and to Sherman that night, I know this mandatory connection thing is a problem for you guys, but if the county will participate and pay for the water line to run from Military Road, I think that's the correct name, which is the main road that goes into the main gate of Pickett. If the county would take responsibility to run the water line the remainder of the way, then maybe 16,000 gallons a day as a user may be enough to offset our need for mandatory connection. The surveys did indicate 20 out of 30 respondents were favorable to connect. I think you remember that. So there is a plurality. I don't know if it's a huge majority, but it's certainly 66% of the respondents did say they would connect on the system. We've missed a deadline to pay for this with the health department, which could be a potential 50% grant. Okay, so we've missed a deadline for that. We submitted on several other projects. Senator Kane would put out a call for appropriation requests, and we couldn't get a letter of support because I don't think the county has gotten to the point where their board is comfortable with committing to paying for that section. Okay, so what I want to bring your attention tonight is, just like we've talked about other things, the total project from
Corporate
L.V.
limits.
Harris's old shop
Right, corporate limits.
all the way across the railroad track to the Cox Lumber property, all the way to the 4-lane, I apologize, which I don't think is necessary. I think you could stop it short and maybe take a left at Runyon's or something like that.
Right.
Okay? $3.66 million. Okay? Of which, and the last item, the $1.4 million project now stands at $2.233 million. At this time, because we haven't really gotten commitments from the county, I think we just set it aside and let the county tell us when they're ready.
And I'd love to help our neighbors out because they're pretty much town of Blackstone, pretty much.
They're on electrical.
But it's just
We pick up the trash, but we really just can't get to that point. And I think Mr. Vaughn told the folks he thought in April, and they've got a meeting coming up this month or this week, I think Thursday night. I just don't know if that's even on the agenda. I think there's been some concerns, and I bring this to you tonight because I did have a call that told me that this has the makings of something explosive and controversial. That's the last thing we need, trying to help people get water. But I think there has been raised a question if $1 million is provided by the county through ARPA funds, and I think Mr. Vaughn actually even stood up
You mentioned that.
and mentioned that up to $1 million of ARPA money could be used. I think you're back into the arms race with fire trucks,
Yeah.
With the upper end of the
Preferential
county.
treatment and that sort of thing.
all that sort of thing. So I really don't want to get y'all into controversy. You don't know
We don't want
enough
the
of what's
controversy.
going on to get beat up and
Are these folks willing to pay? Now, remember, people who get town of Blackstone water that do not live in town pay a double tap fee and pay double the water rate.
I would
50% surcharge.
propose waiving the tap fee.
Okay,
The 50% remains. It's not double, it's 50% more
Surcharge.
on utilities.
Right.
But if it's a mandatory connection, you get the bill.
Right,
I can't physically mandate somebody.
everybody out there will be getting a town water bill and they be paying a rate 50%. It'd be whatever they consume plus a 50% surcharge, which stays in the water system.
Which would be about $36 a month, 24 in town, and then half again out of town if you're a 3,000 gallon or less user.
one of our 6th Street residents, Chris Page, called me this weekend asking why the town couldn't just annex that. But we're still in the situation of we got to come up with the money somehow.
Well, I will tell you, if you annex it, I think part of that, or boundary line adjusted,
Right.
it may not be the worst idea in the world, but I think it's also going to mandate, because any judge presiding or anybody, council on local government providing, get ready, because you're going to need to put sewer in as well, and some other things. So,
Leaf pickup,
Oh, yeah.
stick
All those-
I
pickup,
just mentioned
kinds
it
of
because it was mentioned to me.
police vehicle lockout at Wilburn store. That means Chief Kuzma's going out to deputy sheriff.
you know the deal. I think that there also have been some, and while we're talking about potential for annexations, I think, again, the road out of Cole Harbor has raised its head again, and I've received an email. It's not on the agenda necessarily for discussion, but I've received an email from the county administrator with VDOT's response. I guess they did it again. They looked again, and
Well,
there
your
it is.
tenant to Blackstone has already got a contract in place to pave Cole Harbor with his own money up
you
to
go.
the 2nd Street.
Really?
At least.
Well, like I said,
That's in place.
just for the record, I want everybody to know, like I said, when we love Cole Harbor, but it is a private subdivision.
It is a private subdivision.
It's just like if the people that go, God bless them, people that have bought homes down in Beach Cliff Road. They have to navigate little tiny College Road, Evanston Forest. when they bought the house, that's how it was when they drove down there. I mean, I don't mean to sound cruel. It's just that's the way it is.
I'm not planning to annex anybody. That is an option, but at this point, because of the cost and the potential controversy, I would just say let the county come to us and tell us what we want to do. I've just been trying to get clean water to these
Try to help
folks.
people outside of our borders have clean water.
And for 3 years, we haven't got a response from the county. Excuse me.
The water is terrible down there. I grew up on Cox Road, right there in the middle of it, next to the vet clinic, and we had 3 wells, and not one of them would give you water you wanted to drink.
Oh, yeah.
Everything came out red.
I wonder what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened.
So it's council's pleasure, one of the council's pleasure to pass it by and just,
Wait on the county and see what they have to say.
should we notify the county maybe in a formal letter that we have discussed this and we want to be partners? We feel for the people on Cox Road and the businesses that want Town of Blackstone water, but we are at an impasse and await your further instruction. Look forward to working with, look forward to hearing from you soon. All right, unfinished business number 2, Babs Lane. We're waiting on appraisal, so there's no action there.
Correct?
Anyone have a nominee for the Board of Zoning Appeals? A glamorous job. You could get your own car in the Christmas parade if you buy it.
Maybe Molly would be interested in.
Molly, would you be interested? Does she have to live in?
Yeah, I technically, I live in the building.
Yes. Would you consider it and would give us an answer next month? Or would you give us an answer tonight?
Once a month.
We'll talk.
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda for next month.
I put her on the spot there. I'm sorry.
Item
She was the
number
only
4,
resident I saw.
Item number 4,
Wasn't already on something.
affordable housing. Goes back to that grant between the Commonwealth Regional Council.
It is, and I misreported, and the document that I provided to you stated that our award from the CRC was $434,000, and the award was actually $403,000, and the town was responsible for $31,000 of waived tap fees for 3 homes, and we're responsible for putting the water and sewer connections into the house. We will apply for SEER cap money, and hopefully that can be paid for with grant, but the town's time, labor, and equipment would need to, I believe that the grant actually says in kind. So this is the agreement, so we can start on these homes. I know there's a question about affordable housing, and these will be 3 affordable houses that will be built inside the town limits of the town of Blackstone using primarily grant funds.
Town manager is asking for authorization to execute the agreement, which has been outlined. I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Due to the dollar value, I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item number 5, under DHCD, we have the Industrial Revitalization Fund grant.
And so those of you who may not know is specifically to VUMAC. And we borrowed $600,000 some time ago and have been paying invoices for water, sewer, electrical materials, and for storm drainage to be constructed, of which has started but is not quite finished. We have been drawing down from those funds, paying some interest, and we've applied for this. Our soft costs are not eligible. I think Jennifer Hardy had put together some spreadsheets, but DHCD has rejected our revised budget because it had things like bond counsel when we closed the original.
Like 50 grand.
I mean, it's 15.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we've already paid it out. Okay, but we're not eligible for IRF money. That's got to go into the physical, tangible improvements. Okay, anything left over after water, sewer, electric, materials, and supplies, not labor because we provided the labor, and the stormwater contract, which Jason Walker I think is $309,000. Anything in addition or remaining, not covering soft costs, can be applied towards an emergency generator for the property.
So out of the 600,000 that we have footed ourselves, how much will come out of the town's pocket in the end of this?
Probably because the soft costs are not eligible, probably $35,000, not including Dan Martin's time for the electric crews.
But a $15 million project.
You know, the engineering,
But just make sure
Oh,
people knows that.
probably $35,000 because of engineering. Now, we didn't engineer the project because it was already done, but Randy Jones had to modify the plans to allow us to meet IRF and DHCD
And
guidelines.
Mr. Nash, you make a good point and point that out because, sometimes we hear people in the community, not everybody, but they'll say, town doesn't do anything to try to help bring things here. I don't think that is a fair accusation. We have been over backwards, and God bless the Patels and their staff, because
And there's no local match, but the match that is required is the Patel's $12 million plus and 25 jobs is the obligation that is there. There will be a 10-year obligation for him to operate as a hotel. Okay, and I'll present this to Mr. Patel. I think I also put it down here that